The beef stew had been simmering for 3 hours, and the kitchen windows were fogged so thick I could barely see the streetlights coming on outside. I wiped a circle in the steam with my sleeve and watched the neighbors' cars pull into their driveways, one by one. It was almost 7, and Clara was never this late. I picked up my phone and called her. It rang 6 times before she answered. Where are you? I said, trying to keep my voice light. The stew is ready. I made your favorite, the one with the extra carrots. There was a pause on the other end. A long one. I could hear traffic in the background, the distant honk of a horn. I'm running late, Clara said. Her voice sounded thin, stretched. I'm sorry. I'll be there as soon as I can. Are you all right? I asked. You sound funny. I'm fine, she said too quickly. Just traffic. I'll be there in 40 minutes. I promise. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the blank screen. Something in her voice had been off. That hesitant little catch she always got when she was holding something back. I had known it since we were children, that particular pause she made before she told a lie. Mark came into the kitchen with a stack of plates. He was wearing his good sweater, the navy one I had bought him for our anniversary. He set the plates on the table and looked at me. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing, I said. Clara is just running late. You know how she is. He nodded, but he did not look convinced. He started arranging the forks and knives in neat rows. He always did that when he was anxious. We had been married 8 years, and I knew every one of his nervous habits. Did she say why? He asked. Traffic, I said. She'll be here in 40 minutes. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It's already 7. By the time she gets here, the stew will be cold. I can reheat it, I said. It's her birthday. We can wait. He did not argue, but I saw the flicker of impatience cross his face. He had been like that lately, short-tempered and easily annoyed. I told myself it was work. He had been coming home later and later, and he always looked exhausted. I turned back to the stove and stirred the stew. The beef was tender, falling apart at the edges. I had spent the whole afternoon on it, chopping vegetables and browning the meat, making sure everything was just right. Clara had been through so much this year. She had lost her job at the marketing agency 3 months ago, and she had been struggling to find something new. I had wanted tonight to be special, a night where she could forget her problems and just be my little sister again. Mark came up behind me and put his hand on my shoulder. Don't worry, he said. She'll be here. You know Clara. She's always late. I know, I said. I just wish she would call ahead. I hate waiting. He squeezed my shoulder and went back to setting the table. I listened to the clink of silverware and the hum of the refrigerator. The house was quiet, too quiet. Our house was a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. We had bought it 5 years ago, and I had spent months making it feel like home. The walls were painted a soft beige, and I had hung family photos in the hallway. My parents' wedding picture. Clara and me at the beach. Mark and me on our honeymoon. I looked at the clock again. 7:15. I opened the oven and slid the pan of rolls inside. I had made them from scratch, the way our mother used to. Clara loved them. She used to eat 3 at a time when we were kids, slathering them with butter and honey. Can you call her again? Mark asked from the dining room. Maybe she got lost. She knows where we live, I said. She's been here 100 times. He came back into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. You know I have that trip next week, he said. The headquarters thing. You mentioned it, I said, not really listening. I'll be gone for 2 weeks, he said. Maybe 3. The regional director wants me to oversee the new project personally. I turned to look at him. His face was serious, and there was something in his eyes I could not quite read. Is that a good thing? I asked. I think so, he said. It means they trust me. It could lead to a promotion. That's wonderful, I said, forcing a smile. We could use the extra money. He did not smile back. He just nodded and looked away. At 7:40, I called Clara again. This time she answered on the first ring. I'm almost there, she said. I'm on the main road. Just a few more minutes. Good, I said. I was getting worried. There's no need to worry, she said, but her voice wavered on the last word. I hung up and busied myself with the salad. I chopped cucumbers and tomatoes, tossed them with olive oil and vinegar. Mark had gone into the den to watch the news, and I could hear the low murmur of the television. I felt a knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. At 8 o'clock, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I went to the front door and opened it before she could knock. Clara was standing there in a nice coat, a beige trench I had never seen before. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and her makeup was smudged around her eyes, like she had been crying. "Happy birthday," I said, and I pulled her into a hug. She felt stiff in my arms, her body tense. "Sorry I'm late," she said into my shoulder. I had to stop for gas. "It's fine," I said. "Come in. Dinner is ready." She walked past me into the house, and I saw that she was carrying a small gift bag. She set it on the table and took off her coat. Underneath, she was wearing a simple blouse and slacks. She looked tired. Her face was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Mark came out of the den and gave her a quick hug. "Happy birthday, Clara," he said. "You look nice." "Thank you," she said, but she did not meet his eyes. We sat down to dinner, and I served the stew in big bowls. The rolls were golden brown, and the steam rose up in fragrant clouds. Clara picked at her food, moving the pieces of beef around with her fork. "Tell us about the new job," Mark said, trying to make conversation. "How is it going?" Clara looked up, startled. "What new job?" "The one you started last month," I said. "At the marketing agency. You told me about it on the phone." She set her fork down. "Oh, that? It's fine." "The clients must be challenging," Mark pressed. "I've heard the retail sector is really competitive right now." Clara nodded, but she did not elaborate. She took a tiny bite of her roll and chewed slowly. "I tried a different approach. We were thinking of going to that new bakery in town for dessert," I said. "The one that does the fancy cakes. Or we could just have the chocolate cake I bought. Whatever you prefer." She looked at me then, and I saw her eyes were wet. "The chocolate cake is fine," she said. "You didn't have to go to any trouble." "It's your birthday," I said. "It's not trouble." Mark cleared his throat. "Clara, are you feeling all right? You seem a little off." She put her hands in her lap and stared at the tablecloth. The silence stretched out, heavy and uncomfortable. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, my mother's old clock that I had inherited. "I need to tell you something," Clara said finally. Her voice was so quiet I almost did not hear her. "Go ahead," I said. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "I lost my job today. They fired me." I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. I set my spoon down and looked at her. "Why?" I asked. "What happened?" She shook her head. "They said I mishandled a client account. They said I altered budget figures without authorization. But I didn't, I swear I didn't." Mark leaned forward. "Who made the accusation?" "Her name is Diane," Clara said. "She's my supervisor. She never liked me. From the very first day, she made it clear she didn't want me there." "Did you have a chance to defend yourself?" I asked. "I tried," Clara said. "I told them I never changed any numbers. I showed them my work logs. But Diane had already convinced them I was at fault. They didn't even give me a proper hearing." Her voice cracked on the last word, and the tears started to fall. I reached across the table and took her hand. "It's going to be all right," I said. "You can stay here as long as you need to. We have the guest room. You can take your time finding something new." Mark nodded, but I saw his jaw tighten. He was trying to be supportive, but I could tell he was not happy about it. "Thank you," Clara said, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "I don't know what I'm going to do. I have rent due next week, and I've already spent most of my savings." "Don't worry about that right now," I said. "We'll figure it out." We finished dinner in silence. The food tasted like cardboard. I cleared the dishes and brought out the chocolate cake, but none of us had much of an appetite. Clara blew out the single candle I had put on top, and she made a wish with her eyes squeezed shut. I wondered what she wished for. I hoped it came true. After Clara went to the guest room, I started washing the dishes. Mark came up behind me and put his arms around my waist, something he had not done in weeks. "We need to talk," he said. "I know," I said. "She's going to be okay. She just needs some time." "That's not what I wanted to talk about," he said. I turned around and faced him. "What is it?" He let go of me and stepped back. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he made when he was nervous. "My boss has been making my life difficult," he said. the regional director. He questions everything I do. He's been bringing in outside consultants to review my projects. Are they finding anything wrong? I asked. No, he said. But that's not the point. He's trying to undermine me. I think he wants to push me out. Push you out, I said. Why would he do that? Mark shrugged. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't like me. Maybe he has someone else in mind for my position. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands on a towel. What are you going to do? I don't know, he said. I might get passed over for the promotion. I might even lose my job. I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest, but I pushed it down. I had to stay calm for him. We'll get through it, I said. We always do. He looked at me, and there was a strange expression on his face. It was not anger or fear. It was something else, something I could not name. Sometimes I wonder if any of this is worth it, he said. What do you mean? I asked. He shook his head. Never mind. It's late. I'm going to bed. He walked out of the kitchen, and I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I stood there alone, surrounded by the dirty dishes and the half-eaten cake. The house felt different now, colder somehow. I went to the living room and sat down on the couch. I could hear the faint sound of Clara crying in the guest room. The walls were thin in this house. I covered my face with my hands and let out a long breath. The rain started falling outside, tapping against the windows in a steady rhythm. I thought about Clara and Mark, two people I loved more than anyone in the world. They were both hurting, and I could not fix either of them. I did not know how we had gotten here, to this place of quiet desperation. I did not know if we could find our way back. I stayed on the couch for a long time, watching the rain streak down the glass. The grandfather clock struck 11, then 12. I finally went upstairs and got into bed beside Mark. He was already asleep, his back turned to me. I stared at the ceiling in the darkness, and I felt something slipping away, something I could not hold on to. I did not sleep well that night. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with worries. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of my mother. She was standing in the kitchen of our old house, stirring a pot of stew, just like I had done that evening. She turned to me and smiled, and I tried to speak, but no words came out. When I woke up, the dream faded, and the reality of the day before came rushing back. Clara's tear-streaked face. Mark's hollow eyes. The betrayal at her job, the threat at his. I lay there for a moment, listening to the rain, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I woke up the next morning with a headache pressing behind my eyes. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, a low ceiling of clouds that made the whole house feel dim. I lay still for a few minutes, listening to the quiet. Mark was already gone. I could tell by the cold space beside me and the absence of his coffee mug in the kitchen sink. I got up and put on my robe. The floorboards creaked as I walked down the hallway, and I paused outside the guest room door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and saw Clara sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring at her phone. She looked up when she heard me. Couldn't sleep either, I asked. She shook her head. I've been up since 5. I didn't want to wake you. Nonsense, I said. You should have come and found me. I'll make us some coffee. She followed me to the kitchen and sat at the table while I measured the grounds and filled the pot. I could feel her eyes on me, watching my every move. She looked fragile, like a bird that had flown into a window. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. For ruining your dinner. For everything. You didn't ruin anything, I said. It was your birthday. You're allowed to have a bad day. Not like this, she said. I should have just kept it to myself. I should have waited. Clara, stop, I said, turning to face her. You're my sister. You don't have to pretend with me. She bit her lip and looked down at her hands. The coffee pot finished brewing, and I poured 2 cups. I set one in front of her and sat down across the table. The steam rose between us, and I wrapped my fingers around my mug for warmth. Tell me everything, I said. From the beginning. She took a sip of her coffee and set the mug down. I started at the agency 4 months ago. I was so excited. It was a real job, with a salary and benefits. I thought I could finally get my life together. And then what happened, Diane, she said, spitting the name like it was poison. She was my supervisor. From the first week, she treated me like I was stupid. She gave me assignments with impossible deadlines and then criticized every little detail. She would call me at 9 o'clock at night and demand I come back to the office to fix things that weren't even broken. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I didn't want to worry you," she said. "You and Mark already have so much on your plate." I thought if I just worked harder, it would get better. I wanted to tell her that she should have called me anyway, but I bit my tongue. It would not help to scold her now. "So what happened with the client account?" I asked. The client was a retail brand, a small clothing chain. They had a budget of about $50,000 for a marketing campaign. I was in charge of tracking the expenses and preparing the reports. I did everything by the book. I kept detailed records, and I got all my approvals in writing. "Then how did they accuse you of altering numbers?" Clara shook her head. "The files were shared on a team server. Anyone could have accessed them. Diane had full administrative privileges. She could have changed anything and made it look like I did it." "Do you have any proof?" I asked. "Proof of what?" she said bitterly. "That I'm innocent. The only proof I have is my own word. And Diane has been at that agency for 10 years. Everyone trusts her." I drank my coffee and thought about that. It was a familiar story, the older employee versus the newer one. I had seen it happen at the dental practice a few times, though never so viciously. "We can fight this," I said. "We can talk to a lawyer." Clara laughed, a short, humorless sound. "With what money? I can barely afford to feed myself." "That's why I'm here, isn't it? Because I have nowhere else to go." She started crying again, quiet tears that slid down her cheeks without any sound. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Listen to me," I said. "You are staying here for as long as you need. That is not up for debate. And we will figure out the job situation together. I have a friend, Ruth, who works at a staffing agency. I'll call her first thing on Monday." Clara sniffled and wiped her face with the back of her hand. "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do," I said. "That's what family is for." She nodded, and I thought I saw a little bit of the fight come back into her eyes. It was not much, but it was something. I cleared the coffee mugs and started making breakfast. I scrambled some eggs and toasted the leftover rolls from the night before. Clara ate slowly, but she ate. That was a good sign. When she was finished, I told her to go take a shower and relax. I would handle everything. She went upstairs, and I stood in the kitchen, looking at the pile of dishes from the night before. I had not washed them. I had just left them in the sink and gone to bed. I started running the water and scrubbing the pots. The repetitive motion was soothing. It gave me something to focus on. I thought about Mark. He had left without saying goodbye, which was not like him. He always kissed me on the forehead before he left for work, even if I was still asleep. I checked my phone. No messages. I considered calling him, but I did not want to seem needy. He was under so much pressure at work. I did not want to add to it. By mid-morning, Clara had come back downstairs. She was wearing one of my old sweaters and a pair of jeans. She looked better, more like her old self. "Do you mind if I use your computer?" she asked. "I want to send out some resumes." "Of course," I said. "It's in the den. Help yourself." She disappeared into the den, and I heard the click of the keyboard. I busied myself with cleaning the rest of the house. I dusted the shelves and vacuumed the living room. I straightened the family photos in the hallway. There was one of Clara and me at the beach, from about 15 years ago. We were both so young. I had my arm around her shoulder, and she was grinning at the camera, missing a front tooth. I remembered that summer. Our parents had taken us to the shore for a week. Clara had been afraid of the ocean, so I had held her hand and walked her into the waves until she was laughing and splashing. I wished I could go back to that summer. Life had been so much simpler then. At noon, I made us sandwiches for lunch. Clara came out of the den and sat across from me at the kitchen table. "I sent out 6 applications," she said. "Mostly admin jobs. I don't think I want to work in marketing anymore." "That's fine," I said. "A fresh start might be good." She picked at her sandwich, pulling the crust off in small pieces. "I was thinking," she said slowly, "maybe I could apply at that dental practice where you work. Are they hiring?" I hesitated. It was not that I did not want her around. It was that the dental practice was my place, the one space where I felt competent and in control. I did not want to mix that with the messiness of our family situation. "I don't think they're hiring right now," I said, which was technically true. "But I'll ask Dr. Reeves." You never know. She nodded, but I could tell she was disappointed. The afternoon passed slowly. Clara went back to the den to continue her job search, and I sat in the living room with a book I could not concentrate on. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text from Mark. Nothing. Around 4 o'clock, I decided to call Ruth. She picked up on the second ring. Oh well, hello stranger, she said. How are things? Complicated, I said. I need a favor. Anything, she said. I told her about Clara. About the job loss, the unfair accusation, the desperate situation. Ruth listened without interrupting. That's terrible, she said when I finished. But I can probably help. I have a few clients who are looking for entry-level office staff. The pay won't be great, but it's something. Anything would be a blessing, I said. Ruth promised to make some calls on Monday. Then she hesitated. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. I heard through the grapevine that Mark's company is going through some restructuring. I hope it doesn't affect him. Do you know anything about it? I felt my stomach drop. Restructuring? What kind? I don't have details, Ruth said. Just that they're consolidating departments. There might be layoffs. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat there in the living room, staring at the wall, trying to process what she had said. Mark had not mentioned any layoffs. He had mentioned his boss making his life difficult, but not actual layoffs. I called him at work. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back, trying to keep my voice calm. He did not call back. By 6 o'clock, I was pacing the kitchen. Clara came out of the den and saw my face. What happened? She asked. Nothing, I said. I'm just worried about Mark. He's been working so hard. Clara looked at me strangely, and I wondered if she knew something I did not. I'm sure he's fine, she said. Men like that, they get caught up in their work. They forget to check in. Maybe, I said. I made dinner, a simple pasta with sauce from a jar. Clara and I ate in silence. I kept glancing at the front door, hoping Mark would walk through it. He did not. At 8 o'clock, I tried calling him again. Still no answer. At 9, I called the office. A woman answered, someone I did not recognize. I'm looking for Mark, I said. I'm his wife. He's not answering his phone. There was a pause. Mr. Davis left the office at 5 today, the woman said. I don't know where he went. I thanked her and hung up. My mind was racing. He had left at 5. It was now 9. Where could he be? Clara came into the kitchen and found me standing by the phone, my face white. What is it? She asked. He didn't go home, I said. He left the office at 5, and he never came home. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, she said. For 4 hours, I said. That doesn't make sense. I decided to call his best friend, a man named Patrick who worked at the same company. Patrick answered and told me he had seen Mark leave at 5, but Mark had said he was going straight home. I called the hospital. They had no record of him. I called the police. They said they could not file a missing person report until he had been gone for 24 hours. I sat down at the kitchen table and put my head in my hands. Clara came up behind me and put her arms around my shoulders. Take a breath, she said. He'll come back. He probably just stopped for a drink somewhere. I know, I said. I'm just being paranoid. But I was not paranoid. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. At 10:30, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I ran to the front door and opened it. Mark was getting out of his car, looking tired and rumpled. His tie was loosened, and he was carrying a briefcase. Where were you? I demanded. I've been calling you for hours. He looked at me with blank eyes. I was at a bar, he said. I needed some time to think. Time to think, I said. You couldn't call, you couldn't text. I'm sorry, he said, but his voice was flat. I just needed a few hours to myself. He walked past me into the house and went straight to the den. He did not look at Clara. He did not look at me. I followed him into the den. What is going on? I asked. Ruth told me there might be layoffs at your company. Is that true? He sat down in his armchair and closed his eyes. Yes, he said. It's true. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to worry you, he said. You already have so much on your plate with Clara. Mark, I'm your wife, I said. You can tell me these things. He opened his eyes and looked at me. There was something in his gaze that made me step back. It was not anger. It was resignation. I'm going to lose my job, he said. I found out today. They're letting me go at the end of the month. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the air leave my lungs. How? I asked. You were up for a promotion. You were the best project manager they had. It doesn't matter, he said. The regional director, he has his own people. He's cleaning house. I'm just collateral damage. I sat down on the arm of the couch. My legs felt weak. What are we going to do? He shrugged. I don't know. We'll figure something out. We always do. But the way he said it, it did not sound hopeful. It sounded like he had already given up. I went back to the kitchen and stood in the dark, staring out the window at the empty street. Clara came in and stood beside me. Everything okay? She asked. No, I said. It's not. I told her about Mark's job. She listened quietly and did not offer any false comfort. When I finished, she just nodded. We'll get through it, she said. We always do. I heard the echo of my own words in hers. We always do. But I was not sure anymore. I was not sure we had the strength. That night, I lay in bed next to Mark. He was asleep, but I could not close my eyes. I stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that had gone wrong in the span of 24 hours. Clara's job. Mark's job. The shrinking savings account. The growing distance between us. I thought about my mother. She had always been the strong one. When my father lost his job, she had taken on extra shifts at the hospital. She had never complained, never let us see her worry. She had just kept going, day after day, until things got better. I tried to channel her strength. I tried to tell myself that this was just a rough patch, that we would come out the other side. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to the uneven rhythm of Mark's breathing, I could not shake the feeling that we were already lost. A week passed, and the house settled into a new rhythm. Clara woke up early every morning and sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, scrolling through job listings and sending out applications. She made phone calls, left voicemails, and followed up with emails. She was diligent, almost obsessive. I watched her from the stove as I made breakfast, and I could see the desperation behind her calm exterior. Mark, meanwhile, had become a ghost. He left for work at his usual time, but he came home late and went straight to the den. He did not talk about his job. He did not talk about the layoff. He just sat in his armchair with the television on, staring at the screen without really watching. I tried to draw him out, but he would only give me one-word answers. On Tuesday, I called Ruth to check on the job leads she had promised. She said she had sent Clara's resume to 3 different companies. One of them is a small accounting firm, Ruth said. They're looking for a receptionist. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work. I told Clara about it, and she nodded. I'll call them today, she said. But she did not sound hopeful. She had applied to over 20 positions already and had not gotten a single interview. The rejections were piling up, and each one seemed to chip away at her confidence. I tried to be supportive. I told her it was a tough market. I told her something would come along. But even I was starting to doubt it. On Wednesday, Mark came home with a bottle of wine. He set it on the kitchen counter and said, I have good news. I looked up from the sink, surprised. What is it? He poured himself a glass and took a long drink. I'm not getting laid off, he said. They're keeping me on. What? I said. But you said the regional director was cleaning house. He was, Mark said. But he changed his mind. I'm getting the promotion after all. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. That's wonderful, I said. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He shrugged. I wanted to make sure it was official. They made the announcement today. I'm the new regional director. I hugged him, and he hugged me back, but there was something stiff about his embrace. It did not feel like a celebration. It felt like he was going through the motions. I pulled back and looked at him. What's wrong? This is great news. I know, he said. It is. He poured a second glass and handed it to me. He sat down at the table and told me about the new job. It came with a significant raise and a corner office. It also came with more travel. He would be spending a lot of time at the headquarters in the neighboring city, which was about 2 hours away. The company was paying for an apartment there. An apartment, I said. How long will you be gone? Probably 3 or 4 days a week, he said. Maybe more, at least at first. I took a sip of the wine. It was dry and bitter on my tongue. What about us? I asked. I can't just pick up and leave. I have a job. And Clara is here. He nodded slowly. I know. I was thinking you could come with me. You could transfer to a dental practice in the neighboring city. Clara can take care of herself. She's not in a position to take care of herself, I said. She can barely afford groceries. Mark's jaw tightened. Clara is an adult. She needs to figure out her own life. I stared at him. She's my sister, I said. I'm not going to abandon her. He set his glass down and looked at me with a flat expression. I'm not asking you to abandon her. I'm asking you to consider our marriage. Don't do that, I said. Don't make it sound like I'm choosing her over you. Then what are you choosing? He asked. The question hung in the air between us. I did not have an answer. I had never thought of it as a choice. Mark was my husband. Clara was my sister. They were both part of my life, and I had always assumed they could coexist. I'm not choosing anyone, I said finally. I'm trying to keep everyone together. Mark shook his head. That's not how it works. Sometimes you have to make a decision. He finished his wine and went to the den. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the bottle on the counter. The cork was still lying next to it, a small, useless piece of trash. I picked it up and threw it in the garbage. Clara came out of the guest room and saw my face. What happened? She asked. I told her about Mark's promotion and the apartment in the neighboring city. I told her about the argument. She sat down at the table and folded her hands. Maybe you should go with him, she said quietly. I don't want to be the reason you lose your husband. You're not the reason, I said. If our marriage is falling apart, it's not because of you. Then what is it? She asked. I wanted to say something honest, something true. But I did not know the answer. I only knew that Mark and I had been drifting apart for a long time, long before Clara had moved in. The promotion was just the latest symptom. I don't know, I said. But I'm not going to abandon you. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Thank you, she said. But you need to do what's right for you. I slept on the couch that night. I could not bear to lie next to Mark in the dark, pretending everything was fine. The next morning, I called Ruth and asked her for advice. She listened to my story and let out a long sigh. Marriage is complicated, she said. You and Mark have been through so much together. But you can't let Clara become a wedge between you. Clara isn't the wedge, I said. We were already drifting before she moved in. So, what are you going to do? I don't know, I said. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, maybe you don't have to make a decision right now. Give it some time. See how things develop. That was not very helpful, but it was the best advice I had. On Friday, I came home from work to find Clara sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. Her face was pale, and she was shaking. What's wrong? I asked. She held up a piece of paper. I got a letter from the agency, she said. They're demanding repayment of the client funds. They say I owe them $10,000. I took the letter from her and read it. The language was formal and threatening. It accused Clara of negligence and demanded immediate payment. This is ridiculous, I said. They can't do this. They can, Clara said. They have a legal team. I don't. I sat down across from her. We need to get a lawyer. I told you I can't afford one. We'll find a way, I said. I'll call around. There are pro bono services. Clara shook her head. It's hopeless. They've already made up their minds. I'm the scapegoat. I wanted to argue, but I could see the fight draining out of her. She looked defeated, broken. Let me make some calls, I said. Just give me the weekend. She nodded, but I did not think she believed me. The next morning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I drove to the marketing agency and asked to speak with Diane. The receptionist looked at me with suspicion, but eventually called her. I waited in the lobby for 15 minutes before a sharp-looking woman with short gray hair and a stern expression appeared. I'm Diane, she said. You must be Clara's sister. That's right, I said. I want to talk about this letter. She motioned for me to follow her into a small conference room. We sat across from each other at a polished wooden table. The room smelled of coffee and stale air. Clara is my responsibility, I began. I need to know exactly what happened. Diane folded her hands on the table. Clara altered budget figures on a client account. It's a serious violation of our policies. We had no choice but to terminate her. Altered how? I asked. I've seen her work. She's meticulous. She wouldn't make a mistake like that. Mistake, Diane said, raising an eyebrow. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. We have email evidence. I leaned forward. What evidence? Diane studied me for a moment, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder. She opened it and slid several pages across the table. I recognized Clara's work email address. The emails were sent to an external domain, and they contained pricing information for the retail brand. This is confidential client data, Diane said. Clara sent it to a competitor. We discovered it during a routine audit. I stared at the pages. The dates matched the weeks Clara had been working late. The language in the emails was technical, but it was clearly about pricing strategies. She says she never sent these. I said. She would say that, Diane replied. But the evidence is clear. We're not pressing charges, but we want the money back. The client suffered financial losses because of the leak. I felt my stomach churn. I had come here expecting to defend my sister. Instead, I had been handed proof of her guilt. What do you want from me? I asked. Diane shook her head. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted you to know the truth. I thought you deserved to know who you were housing. I left the agency in a daze. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at nothing. The evidence was damning. The emails were undeniable. I drove home slowly, dreading the conversation I knew I had to have. Clara was in the living room when I walked in. She looked up from her laptop and saw my face. What happened? She asked. I sat down across from her and placed the folder on the coffee table. I want to see Diane, I said. Her face went white. You did what? I wanted to help, I said. She showed me the emails. Clara stared at the folder like it was a snake. I can explain. Please do, I said. She was silent for a long moment. Then she started crying, ugly, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. I did not move. I did not reach out to comfort her. I was desperate, she said. I was so broke. I couldn't pay my rent. I couldn't afford groceries. So you sold information, I said. You betrayed your employer. I only did it once, she said. I swear. The competitor offered me $1,000 for the pricing data. I thought it was just a one-time thing. I thought I could get away with it. Clara, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You could go to prison for this. I know, she said. I know. I was stupid. I was so stupid. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. $1,000. She had risked everything for $1,000. When did this happen? I asked. 2 months ago, she said. I didn't think it would ever come out. I didn't think Diane would find out. Did you think she wouldn't find out? I said, my voice rising. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? She just sat there, crying, unable to answer. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the street, at the neat houses and the manicured lawns. Our neighbors were out walking their dogs. It was a normal Saturday, a peaceful day. I need you to leave, I said. Clara gasped. What? I need you to leave my house, I said. You can't stay here. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, I said. But you can't stay here. I can't have you in my house. I can't have you in my life, not like this. She stood up and walked toward me. Please, she said. I'm your sister. You can't just throw me out. I turned to face her. You lied to me, I said. You let me believe you were innocent. You let me worry about you and try to fix your life, and all along you were guilty. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, I said. You made a choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. She packed her things in silence. I stood in the hallway and watched her shove clothes into her suitcase. She did not meet my eyes. I'll call a friend, she said. I'll stay with her. Good, I said. She picked up her suitcase and walked to the front door. She paused with her hand on the knob. I know you hate me, she said quietly. I don't blame you. I don't hate you, I said. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. She opened the door and stepped outside. The cold air rushed in. I watched her walk down the driveway to her car. She loaded her suitcase into the trunk and got behind the wheel. I closed the door and leaned against it. The house was silent. Too silent. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking. I looked at the clock. It was barely noon. The day stretched out in front of me, empty and cold. I thought about Clara and the emails and the lies. I thought about Mark and the promotion and the apartment in the neighboring city. I thought about my mother and her quiet strength, and I wondered if she would have forgiven Clara. I wondered if she would have turned her back on her own sister. I did not know the answer. I only knew that I had made a choice, and I had to live with it. I sat down at the table and stared at the empty chair across from me. It was the chair Clara had sat in the night of her birthday, the chair she had cried in and confessed in and lied in. I put my head down on the table and closed my eyes. The house was quiet, and I was alone. The house felt different after Clara left. It was not just the silence, though that was part of it. It was the absence of her small things, the coffee mug she always left on the counter, the laptop charger snaked across the living room floor, the faint scent of her shampoo in the bathroom. I found myself walking past the guest room and pausing at the door, half expecting to see her sitting on the bed with her phone. But the room was empty. The bed was made. The closet was bare. I tried to focus on my own life. I went to work every day and came home every evening. I cooked dinner for one and ate it at the kitchen table while the television played in the background. I called Mark every night, and we talked about nothing: the weather, the news, the mundane details of our separate days. He never mentioned Clara, and I did not bring her up. It was as if she had never existed. Mark was spending most of his time in the neighboring city now. His new role as regional director demanded it. He had taken the apartment the company had offered, a furnished place near the headquarters. He sent me photos of it on his phone. It was modern and sterile, all gray walls and glass tables. I did not like it. It did not look like a home. "Maybe you could come visit next weekend," he said during one of our calls. "I could show you around the city. We could have dinner at that Italian place you like." "I don't know," I said. "I have a lot of work to catch up on." "You always say that," he said. "You need to take a break." I knew he was right, but I could not bring myself to make the trip. The thought of being in that sterile apartment, of pretending everything was normal, felt exhausting. I told him I would think about it, and we ended the call with the same empty promises we always made. At work, I threw myself into my tasks with a determination that surprised even me. I reorganized the filing system, updated the patient database, and ordered new supplies for the office. Dr. Reeves noticed my efforts and complimented me on my efficiency. It was the first time he had said anything nice to me in weeks. But the peace did not last. A new dental hygienist had been hired, a young woman named Susan. She was in her late 20s, with glossy hair and a quick smile. She was friendly to everyone, but there was something about her I did not trust. She laughed too loudly at Dr. Reeves's jokes. She complimented the other staff members in a way that felt calculated. At first, I tried to be welcoming. I showed her where we kept the supplies and explained the office procedures. She nodded along and thanked me, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes: impatience, maybe, or contempt. It was subtle, but I noticed it. Within a few weeks, Susan had made herself indispensable. She stayed late to help with paperwork. She brought in pastries for the morning meetings. She remembered everyone's coffee orders. The other hygienists loved her. Dr. Reeves adored her. And then the comments started. "I can't imagine working in an office this outdated," Susan said one afternoon, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It feels like stepping back in time." I was at my desk, filing insurance claims. I looked up and saw her standing by the water cooler, her eyes fixed on me. "What do you mean?" I asked. She smiled, all teeth. "Oh, nothing personal. It's just that some of the procedures we use here are a little old-fashioned. But I guess that's what happens when you have the same system for decades." "Change takes time and money," I said evenly. "Dr. Reeves is aware of the options." "Of course he is," she said. "I'm just trying to help him see the benefits of modernization." She walked away, and I felt my cheeks burn. I was not angry. I was embarrassed. She had made me feel obsolete, like a piece of furniture that had been left in the corner for too long. I mentioned it to Ruth over the phone that evening. "She's just trying to rattle you," Ruth said. "Don't let her get under your skin." "Easier said than done," I replied. "She's everywhere. She's always making these little comments, and no one else seems to notice." "Maybe you should talk to Dr. Reeves," Ruth suggested. "Tell him how you feel." "And say what I asked." That I'm threatened by the new hygienist, that would make me look petty. Ruth sighed. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. I wanted to stand up for myself, but I did not know how. I had never been good at confrontation. I had always been the one who kept the peace, who smoothed things over, who made sure everyone got along. But Susan was making it impossible to keep the peace. The situation came to a head one Friday afternoon. I arrived at work to find that Susan had reorganized the patient files without asking me. The files were my responsibility. I had spent years developing a system that worked, and she had dismantled it in an afternoon. I found her in the break room, sipping a cup of tea. Susan, I said, keeping my voice calm. I noticed you changed the filing system. She looked up, unruffled. I did. The old system was inefficient. I made it more streamlined. You should have cleared it with me first, I said. The files are my department. Your department, she said, raising an eyebrow. I thought we were all on the same team. We are, I said. But I have procedures. You need to follow them. She set down her tea and gave me a condescending smile. I'm just trying to help, that's all. Dr. Reeves said I could make improvements wherever I see fit. She walked out of the room, leaving me standing there with my mouth open. I felt like I had been slapped. I went to Dr. Reeves and told him what had happened. He shrugged and said, Susan is just trying to help. She has fresh ideas. Maybe we should give them a chance. Fresh ideas are fine, I said. But she needs to respect the chain of command. Chain of command, he said, looking confused. This is a small office. We don't have a chain of command. I realized then that I had lost. Dr. Reeves did not see me as a manager. He saw me as a secretary who had been around too long. He was not going to defend me against Susan. He was not going to protect my position. I walked back to my desk and sat down. My hands were shaking. I looked around the office and saw Susan laughing with the other hygienists. She looked over at me and smiled. I knew then that she was after my job. She was not just making improvements. She was positioning herself to take over. I started documenting everything. I kept a log of Susan's comments and her unauthorized changes. I copied emails and saved screenshots. I told myself I was building a case. If Dr. Reeves ever tried to let me go, I would have evidence of her sabotage. But I also knew that it might not matter. Dr. Reeves was a passive man who hated conflict. He would not stand up to Susan. He would not stand up for me. That night, I came home to an empty house. Mark was still in the neighboring city. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, staring at the wall. I thought about Clara and the emails and the lies. I thought about Susan and her calculated smiles. I thought about Mark and the growing distance between us. I felt like I was losing everything, one piece at a time. I called Mark that evening, hoping for some comfort. He answered on the first ring, but his voice was distracted. I can't talk long, he said. I'm in the middle of something. Something more important than your wife? I asked. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. He was silent for a moment. That's not fair, he said. You know I'm under a lot of pressure. I know, I said. I'm sorry. I'm just having a rough time. What happened? He asked. I told him about Susan. I told him about Dr. Reeves and the filing system and the feeling of being pushed out. I told him about the documentation I had started keeping. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, maybe you should find another job. What? I said, stunned. Find another job, he repeated. You've been at that practice for years. Maybe it's time for a change. Mark, I'm not going to let Susan run me out, I said. That's exactly what she wants. Then what are you going to do? He asked. Fight her and lose. It sounds like Dr. Reeves has already made up his mind. I did not have an answer for that. I have to go, he said. I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up, and I was left with the dial tone buzzing in my ear. I spent the weekend alone. I cleaned the house from top to bottom. I scrubbed the floors and washed the windows. I reorganized the pantry and threw out expired food. I worked until my hands were raw and my back ached, but the physical exhaustion was a welcome relief from the mental exhaustion. On Sunday afternoon, I decided to look at our finances. I had not done it in a while, and with Mark's new role, I wanted to make sure we were on track. I logged into our joint savings account and started reviewing the transactions. At first, everything looked normal. There were deposits from Mark's salary, withdrawals for the mortgage and utilities. But then I noticed something strange. A series of withdrawals I did not recognize. 4 of them, over the past 6 months, each for $2,000. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I had not authorized these withdrawals. I had not even known about them. I called Mark immediately. He did not answer. I left a voicemail, my voice shaking. Mark, call me back. It's important. I waited for hours. He did not call. On Monday morning, I called him again. This time he answered. What's this about? He asked. I'm in a meeting. I found withdrawals from our savings account, I said. $8,000 total. I didn't authorize them. There was a pause. I used the money for work expenses, he said. The company will reimburse me. Work expenses, I said. You used our joint account for work expenses without telling me. I didn't think it was a big deal, he said. It's temporary. Mark, that's $8,000, I said. That's not a small amount. I know, he said. I'll send you the receipts. He hung up before I could ask any more questions. The receipts never came. I waited a week, then 2. I brought it up again during one of our phone calls. Where are the receipts? I asked. I'm still gathering them, he said. It's complicated. Some of the expenses are pending. Pending, I said. Mark, that money is gone. I need to know where it went. He sighed. I told you. It was work expenses. Why don't you trust me? Because you're not giving me any reason to, I said. The silence on his end was deafening. I'll send them by the end of the week, he said finally. But he did not. I started paying closer attention to everything. I looked at his phone bill, which he still paid through our shared family plan. I saw a number I did not recognize. It appeared multiple times a day, sometimes late at night. I called the number. A woman answered. Hello, who is this? I asked. And my name is Alice, she said. Who's calling? I'm Mark's wife, I said. How do you know my husband? There was a pause. I'm his assistant, she said. I work at the headquarters. His assistant, I repeated. Why does he call you so late at night? Another pause. We work on projects together, she said. Sometimes we have to talk outside of business hours. I see, I said. Thank you for your time. I hung up and stared at the phone. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. I asked Mark about the number when he came home that weekend. He was exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. He barely looked at me as he walked through the door. Who's Alice? I asked. He froze. She's my assistant, he said. Why? I found her number on the phone bill, I said. You call her a lot. He turned to face me. She's my assistant, he repeated. We work together. Is that all? I asked. Yes, he said. That's all. But he did not look me in the eye. I wanted to push further. I wanted to demand the truth. But I was so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of suspecting. Tired of the weight of everything pressing down on me. I let it go. That night, I lay in bed next to Mark. He was already asleep, his breathing slow and even. I stared at the ceiling and I thought about all the little lies. The money. The phone number. The growing distance between us. I had started documenting everything. I had a log of Susan's behavior. I had copies of the unauthorized email changes. I had records of Mark's unexplained withdrawals. It was a lot of evidence. But I was not sure what I was building. A case for what? A divorce, a lawsuit, a confrontation? I did not know. I only knew that I could not trust anyone anymore. Not Clara. Not Susan. Not even Mark. The house was silent, and I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. I woke up on Monday morning with a knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with the eggs I had eaten for breakfast. The knot had been there for weeks now, a tight ball of anxiety that I could not untangle. I got dressed and drove to work, and I spent the whole ride thinking about the log I had been keeping. The log of Susan's comments. The log of her unauthorized changes. The log of every small slight and every calculated move. The dental practice was quiet when I arrived. The receptionist, a young woman named Tammy, was already at her desk, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled at me. Morning, Claire. You're early today. I couldn't sleep, I said. I figured I'd get a head start. I went to my desk and opened the filing cabinet. I pulled out the patient files that Susan had reorganized and started putting them back in the order I preferred. It was a small act of defiance, but it made me feel a little better. Dr. Reeves arrived at 9, looking cheerful. He greeted everyone with a smile and went straight to his office. I followed him in. Dr. Reeves, I said. I need to talk to you about Susan. He looked up from his papers. What about her? Her behavior is unprofessional, I said. She's been making comments about me in front of other staff members. She's been reorganizing files without authorization. It's creating a hostile environment. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Claire, I appreciate your concerns. But Susan has been doing excellent work. She's brought in new patients, and the staff seems to like her. The staff likes her because she's charming, I said. But she's undermining me. She's trying to take over my responsibilities. Your responsibilities are secure, he said. No one is trying to take your job. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think he was being sincere. But I had seen the way he looked at Susan, the way he laughed at her jokes and praised her ideas. He was not going to take my side. I've been documenting everything, I said. I have a log of her behavior. I have copies of emails. If you want to see them, I can show you. He raised an eyebrow. A log, Claire, that sounds a little excessive. Maybe you're overthinking this. I'm not overthinking, I said. I'm trying to protect my position. He sighed. I'll talk to Susan, he said. But I need you to trust me. I've been in this business for 30 years. I know how to manage my staff. I left his office with a hollow feeling in my chest. He had dismissed me. He had not taken me seriously. I went back to my desk and sat down. I opened my log and added a new entry. Spoke with Dr. Reeves about Susan. He dismissed my concerns. I did not know what else to do. I felt powerless. That afternoon, the situation escalated. I was in the supply closet, restocking the paper towels, when I heard Susan's voice in the hallway. She was talking to one of the other hygienists, a woman named Jenna. She thinks she runs this place, Susan said, laughing. She acts like she owns the office. It's hilarious. She's been here forever, Jenna said. She probably thinks she's untouchable. Not for long, Susan said. Dr. Reeves is starting to see what I bring to the table. It's only a matter of time. I stood frozen in the supply closet, clutching a roll of paper towels. My face was hot. My hands were shaking. I waited until they had walked away, and then I stepped out into the hallway. I went to the break room and poured myself a glass of water. I took a long drink and tried to steady my breathing. When I returned to my desk, I made a decision. I would not let Susan push me out. I would not give her the satisfaction. The next few days were a war of attrition. Susan continued her campaign of small cruelties, and I continued to document every single one. I saved emails. I wrote down comments. I noted the dates and times of every unauthorized change she made. I also started looking for evidence of larger patterns. I reviewed the patient scheduling system and noticed that Susan had been booking her own patients during the prime time slots, leaving the other hygienists with the less desirable hours. I brought it up with Dr. Reeves, but he shrugged it off. She's popular with the patients, he said. They ask for her specifically. That's not the point, I said. The schedule should be fair. Everyone should get an equal share of the prime slots. He sighed and said he would look into it. I knew he would not. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. The constant vigilance, the endless documentation, the feeling of being under attack, it was wearing me down. I came home every night and collapsed on the couch, too tired to even eat dinner. Mark was still in the neighboring city. We talked on the phone, but the conversations were strained. I told him about my struggles at work, and he listened, but I could tell his mind was elsewhere. Maybe you should take some time off, he said during one of our calls. You look exhausted. I can't take time off, I said. If I leave, Susan will take over. I'll never get my position back. Then what are you going to do? He asked. I'm going to fight, I said. I'm not going to let her win. He was silent for a moment. Sometimes you have to pick your battles, he said. Is this really worth it? I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask him why he was not on my side. I wanted to tell him that he was the one who had made things worse, with his secrets and his lies and his unexplained withdrawals. But I did not. I just said goodnight and hung up. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from Ruth. She had been checking in on me regularly, and I appreciated her support. How are you holding up? She asked. Barely, I said. Susan is relentless. She's made my life a living hell. Have you talked to Dr. Reeves again? I said. He doesn't take me seriously. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Maybe you need to take a different approach, she said. Instead of going to Dr. Reeves, try going to the staff directly. Build alliances. Get people on your side. Everyone already likes Susan, I said. She's made sure of that. Not everyone, Ruth said. There's always someone who sees through the act. You just have to find them. I thought about what she said. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been fighting the wrong battle. On Monday, I decided to try a new approach. I invited one of the other hygienists, a quiet woman named Marisol, out for coffee after work. Marisol was in her 40s, a hard worker who kept to herself. She was the only person in the office who had not joined Susan's fan club. We sat in a small cafe near the practice, nursing our lattes. Marisol was hesitant at first, but I eventually coaxed her into opening up. Susan is a lot, she said. She's friendly, but she's also pushy. She wants everything done her way. Have you noticed how she treats me? I asked. Marisol nodded. I have. She's not subtle. She talks about you behind your back. She makes comments about your age and your methods. Why doesn't anyone say anything? I asked. Because she's good at her job, Marisol said. And Dr. Reeves likes her. People are afraid to rock the boat. I felt a surge of validation. I was not crazy. I was not imagining things. She's trying to take my position, I said. She's been reorganizing files and taking over my responsibilities. Marisol looked surprised. I didn't know about the files. But I've noticed she spends a lot of time in your area. I thought she was just nosy. She's more than nosy, I said. She's a threat. Marisol thought for a moment. What do you need from me? Just be aware, I said. If you see anything suspicious, let me know. And if she ever tries to involve you in her schemes, don't go along with it. Marisol nodded. I can do that. We finished our coffee and went our separate ways. I felt a tiny spark of hope. I was not alone. There was at least one person in the office who saw the truth. The next day, I arrived at work determined to keep fighting. I greeted everyone with a smile. I avoided Susan's gaze. I focused on my work and tried not to let her get under my skin. But Susan was relentless. She cornered me in the break room during lunch. Claire, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I've been thinking about the filing system. I found a much more efficient way to organize the patient records. I'm going to implement it next week. No, you're not, I said. I've already told Dr. Reeves that you need to clear changes with me. Dr. Reeves told me I could make improvements, she said. He said I had his full support. I don't care what he said, I replied. The filing system is my responsibility. If you want to change it, you need to go through me. She smiled. We'll see about that. She walked away, and I felt my hands shake with anger. I went to my desk and opened my log. I added a new entry. Susan threatened to change the filing system again. She claims Dr. Reeves gave her permission. I knew I needed to talk to Dr. Reeves again. I needed to force him to take a stand. I waited until the end of the day, when the office was quiet and most of the staff had gone home. I knocked on his door and walked in. Dr. Reeves, I said. We need to talk. He looked up surprised. Claire. I was just about to leave. This won't take long, I said. I need you to tell Susan to stop interfering with my work. She's been making changes without permission, and she's been spreading rumors about me. It has to stop. He sighed. Claire, I've already talked to her. She says she's just trying to help. She's not trying to help, I said. She's trying to take my job. And you're letting her do it. His face flushed. That's not true. I value your work, Claire. You've been with me for years. If you value my work, then you need to back me up, I said. You need to tell Susan to stay in her lane. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, fine. I'll talk to her again. I left his office, but I did not feel victorious. I felt like I had won a small battle in a larger war. The next morning, Susan was waiting for me in the break room. She looked furious. I heard you went to Dr. Reeves, she said. Tattling like a child. I'm not tattling, I said. I'm protecting my position. Your position, she sneered. You think that's going to last? You're old, Claire. You're stuck in your ways. Dr. Reeves is just too polite to say it. I did not respond. I just walked out of the break room and went to my desk. I opened my log and added a new entry. Susan confronted me in the break room. She called me old and stuck in my ways. I did not engage. I sat there, staring at the screen. I thought about what Susan had said. Was she right? Was I old and stuck in my ways? Was that why Dr. Reeves was so eager to side with her? I pushed the thought away. I could not afford to doubt myself. Not now. That evening, I drove home in a daze. The traffic was heavy, and I sat in my car, staring at the brake lights of the car in front of me. I thought about everything that had happened. Susan's campaign. Dr. Reeves's passivity. Mark's distance. Clara's betrayal. I felt like I was drowning, and no one was reaching out to save me. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room. I looked around at the house, the home Mark and I had built together. It felt empty. It felt cold. I thought about calling Mark, but I did not. What would I say? Everything was falling apart, and he was 2 hours away, living in a sterile apartment with a woman named Alice. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I stopped at Clara's name. I had not spoken to her since the day I had asked her to leave. I did not know where she was or how she was doing. I put the phone down. I could not call her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I finished my wine and went to bed. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and I let myself feel the weight of it all. The loneliness. The fear. The anger. I thought about my mother again. I thought about how she had handled her own struggles. She had always been so strong, so unshakable. I wondered if she had ever felt as broken as I did now. I fell asleep with tears on my cheeks. The house was silent, and I was alone. Mark came home on Friday evening. I heard his key in the lock, and I felt my stomach tighten. I had been dreading this moment all week. I had rehearsed what I was going to say, but now that he was here, the words felt stuck in my throat. He walked into the kitchen and set his suitcase by the door. He looked tired, more tired than I had ever seen him. His shirt was wrinkled, and there was a shadow of stubble on his jaw. Hi, he said. I'm home. Hi, I replied. I was standing at the counter, pretending to organize the mail. I did not turn around. He came up behind me and put his hands on my shoulders. It's good to see you, he said. I've missed you. I shrugged him off and turned to face him. We need to talk. He sighed. Can it wait? I've had a long drive. I'd like to shower first. No, I said. It can't wait. I walked to the dining table and sat down. He followed me, sitting across from me with a wary expression. I've been doing some thinking, I began. About us. About everything. Okay, he said slowly. What about it? I took a deep breath. I know you didn't lend money to your brother, I said. I called him. He said he never received a cent. Mark's face went pale. You called my brother? Yes, I said. I did. And he told me the truth. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at the table. I also know about Alice, I continued. I've seen the phone records. I've seen how often you call her. She's my assistant, he said, but his voice was weak. She's more than your assistant, I said. I did some research. I looked up your company's policies. There's a strict rule against fraternization. And I found out that Alice is the sister of the regional director. Mark's head snapped up. What? How do you know that? It doesn't matter how I know, I said. What matters is that it's true. And I know you've been using company funds to take her to dinners. I know the withdrawals from our savings account were to cover your personal expenses. He stared at me, his face a mixture of shock and guilt. I can explain, he said. Then explain, I said. I'm listening. He ran his hands through his hair and let out a long breath. It started 6 months ago, he said. I was at the headquarters for a training session. Alice was assigned to assist me. We worked long hours, and we started having dinner together. It was innocent at first, just 2 colleagues grabbing a meal. Then what happened? I asked. Things got complicated, he said. She was there. I was lonely. You were always so focused on Clara, on your job. I felt like I was invisible. Mark, that's not an excuse, I said, my voice trembling. You made a choice. You chose to lie to me. I know, he said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He reached across the table, but I pulled my hand away. The withdrawals, I said. Where did that money go? He sighed. I used it to pay for some of our dinners. And I paid for her hotel room a few times when she traveled for work. It was wrong. I know it was wrong. $8,000, I said. $8,000 of our money, and you spent it on another woman. It wasn't like that, he said. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was lost. I stood up and walked to the window. I stared out at the street, at the houses and the trees and the cars. My neighbors were having a barbecue in their backyard. I could hear their laughter drifting through the open window. Did you sleep with her? I asked. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, yes. Once. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I felt my heart crack open. I had suspected it, but hearing him say it out loud was different. It was real. It was concrete. It was a betrayal I could not ignore. I want you to leave, I said quietly. Claire, please, he said. I'm begging you. Give me a chance to make it right. I said I want you to leave. He stood up and walked toward me. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll transfer back to the local office. I'll go to counseling. Whatever it takes. I turned to face him. You should have thought about that before you slept with your boss's sister. He flinched like I had slapped him. I know I messed up, he said. But I'm telling you the truth now. I'm telling you everything. Everything, I said. Are you sure about that? Because I've been doing some digging, Mark. And I found out that Alice was not just your assistant. She was part of a plan. The regional director wanted to ensure your loyalty. He sent Alice to seduce you. The promotion wasn't based on your work. It was based on your cooperation. Mark stared at me, his mouth open. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you were a pawn, I said. Alice was playing you. The whole thing was a setup. You never knew she was the director's sister until after the promotion was finalized. But you went along with it. You let yourself be used. He shook his head slowly. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Maybe you didn't know, I said. But that doesn't change what happened. You still betrayed me. You still lied to me. He sank into a chair and put his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. I stood there, watching him. I felt nothing but exhaustion. The anger had drained out of me, leaving a hollow emptiness. I need you to leave, I said again. I need some time to think. He nodded slowly. He got up and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. Don't, I said. I'll call you when I'm ready. He left. The door closed behind him, and the house fell silent. I sat down at the table and stared at the empty chair across from me. I thought about everything he had said. The affair. The lies. The setup. It was too much to process. I called Ruth and told her what had happened. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said, Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? No, I said. I just needed to tell someone. Claire, you can't deal with this alone, she said. You need support. I know, I said. I'll figure it out. I hung up and sat in the silence. The house felt enormous, empty, and cold. The next morning, I woke up early. I had not slept well. I had tossed and turned all night, my mind racing with thoughts of Mark and Alice and the lost money. I got up and made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall. I thought about Dr. Reeves and Susan. I thought about the way he had dismissed my concerns, the way she had undermined my authority. I thought about my log, the endless documentation that had gotten me nowhere. I thought about Clara, the emails, the lies, the betrayal. I thought about Mark, the affair, the money, the secrets. I was surrounded by people who had let me down, people who had taken advantage of my trust, people who had seen me as a means to an end. And yet, I was still standing. I was still here. I finished my coffee and decided to go to work. I could not stay in that empty house another minute. The office was busy that morning. Patients were coming and going, and the phones were ringing off the hook. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction. But Susan was there, lurking in the background. She watched me from across the room, her eyes narrowed. I ignored her. At lunch, I went to the break room and found Marisol. We sat together and ate our sandwiches in quiet solidarity. I heard about what happened with Dr. Reeves, Marisol said. I'm sorry. It's fine, I said. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be used to it, she said. You deserve better. I looked at her. Thank you. That means a lot. We finished our lunch in silence. When I went back to my desk, Susan was waiting for me. "I heard you're having some problems at home," she said, smirking. "I hope everything's okay." "Mind your own business," I said. She laughed. "Just trying to be friendly." I walked away from her and went to Dr. Reeves's office. I knocked on the door and walked in. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up from his papers. "Claire, what is it now?" "I'm giving you an ultimatum," I said. "Either Susan stops undermining me, or I'm going to take this to the board." He raised an eyebrow. "The board, Claire? That's a bit extreme." "Extreme," I said. "You've let her run roughshod over my position. You've dismissed my concerns. You've taken her side at every turn. If you won't do something about it, I will." He leaned back in his chair and studied me. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I said. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll talk to her. I'll tell her to back off." "That's not enough," I said. "I want a written agreement. I want her responsibilities clearly defined. And I want a formal apology for the way she's treated me." He nodded slowly. "I'll arrange it." I left his office, feeling a small sense of victory. It was not a complete victory, but it was something. That evening, I came home to an empty house. Mark was still gone. I did not know if he would come back. I sat in the living room and stared at the wall. I thought about everything I had done in the past few weeks. The fights. The confrontations. The betrayals. I thought about my mother again. I thought about the strength she had shown, the resilience. I wanted to be like her. I wanted to be strong. But strength was not easy. Strength meant making hard choices. It meant standing up for yourself, even when no one else would. I picked up my phone and called Clara. She answered on the first ring. "Claire," she said, her voice hesitant. "It's me," I said. "I want you to know that I don't hate you. I'm still angry. But I don't hate you." She was silent for a moment. Then she said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." "I know," I said. "We'll figure it out. We always do." We talked for a little while longer. She told me she had found a job at a bakery. She said she was trying to be different. I told her I was proud of her. When I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was not gone. It was still there. But it was lighter. I went to bed that night and slept better than I had in weeks. The house was still empty. The future was still uncertain. But I was no longer alone. I had taken the first step. I had started to rebuild. 2 weeks passed. I did not count the days exactly, but I felt each one heavy and slow. Mark called a few times, and I let the voicemails pile up. I was not ready to talk to him. I was not ready to make any decisions. I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what I wanted. I went to work every day and came home every night. The routine was a comfort, a small anchor in the chaos of my life. Dr. Reeves had kept his promise. Susan had been given a written warning, and her responsibilities had been clearly defined. She no longer had access to the filing system, and she was required to clear all changes with me. She did not apologize, but she stopped making comments. She kept her distance, and I kept mine. Marisol and I had become closer. We had lunch together almost every day, and we talked about our lives, our families, our struggles. She told me about her husband's health problems and her teenage son's rebellion. I told her about Clara and Mark and the betrayals that had upended my world. She listened without judgment, and her quiet support was more valuable than she would ever know. On a Saturday morning, I decided to clean out the garage. It was something I had been putting off for months. The garage was cluttered with boxes and old furniture, remnants of a life we had not quite let go of. I dragged everything out onto the driveway and started sorting through it. I made piles for donation, piles for trash, piles for things I wanted to keep. I found a box of my mother's things. It was tucked away in the corner, behind an old bicycle and a stack of dusty books. I opened it carefully, lifting the flaps with a sense of reverence. Inside were old photos, faded and worn. A pair of gloves she had worn to church. A worn-out recipe book with her handwriting in the margins. And then I found the letters. There were about a dozen of them, tied together with a faded ribbon. The envelopes were addressed to my mother in a flowing, elegant script. The return address was a name I did not recognize. I hesitated for a moment, and then I untied the ribbon and pulled out the first letter. I sat down on the garage floor, the concrete cold beneath me, and I started to read. The letters were from a man named Arthur. He was not my father. He was someone my mother had met at a conference years ago, when I was just a teenager. The letters were beautiful and devastating. They spoke of love and longing, of stolen moments and secret meetings. My mother had written back to him, and he had kept all her letters. These were his replies. I read through them all, one by one. My hands were shaking. My eyes were burning with tears I had not shed in years. My mother, the rock of our family, the woman I had always looked up to, had had a secret life. She had loved someone else. She had been unfaithful to my father. I did not know how to process it. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: anger, confusion, sadness. But also something else. Understanding. I sat in the garage for a long time, rereading the letters, trying to make sense of it all. My mother had been unhappy in her marriage. She had felt invisible, unseen. Arthur had made her feel seen. He had given her something she had been missing. I thought about my own marriage. I thought about Mark and Alice. I thought about the loneliness he had described, the feeling of being invisible. I did not condone what he had done. I was still angry. But I understood it, in a way I had not before. I put the letters back in the box and went inside. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. I stared out the window at the gray sky, and I thought about my mother. I thought about all the years she had hidden this part of herself, all the years she had carried the weight of her secret. I wondered if she had ever found peace. I wondered if she had ever forgiven herself. I decided to call Mark. I did not know what I was going to say, but I knew I had to say something. He answered on the first ring. Claire, his voice was tentative, almost fearful. It's me, I said. Can you come home? I need to talk to you. I'll be there tonight, he said. I'll leave right now. I hung up and waited. I did not know how the conversation would go. I did not know if I would forgive him or tell him to leave for good. But I knew I had to face him. I had to have the conversation I had been avoiding. He arrived at 8 o'clock. I heard his car pull into the driveway, and I felt my heart pound. I went to the front door and opened it before he could knock. He looked terrible. His eyes were red, and he had lost weight. He was carrying a small suitcase, and he set it down on the porch. Can I come in? He asked. I nodded and stepped aside. He walked into the living room and sat down on the couch. I sat across from him, in the armchair where I had spent so many sleepless nights. Before we talk, I said, I want to tell you something. I found some letters today. My mother's letters. She had an affair. Years ago. I didn't know until today. Mark looked at me confused. I don't understand. Why are you telling me this? Because it made me realize something, I said. People make mistakes. People do things they regret. My mother was not a bad person. She was just unhappy. She was lonely. He nodded slowly. I was lonely too, he said. But that's not an excuse. I know it's not, I said. But it's an explanation. And I think I understand it better now. We sat in silence for a moment. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantelpiece. I want to be honest with you, I said. I'm not forgiving you. Not yet. What you did was wrong. You broke my trust, and that's not something that can be fixed overnight. I know, he said. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, whatever you need. I want you to transfer back to the local office, I said. I don't care if it means a demotion. I want you home. I want us to rebuild. He nodded. I'll do it. I'll put in the request tomorrow. And I want you to be honest with me from now on, I said. No more secrets. No more lies. I promise, he said. I looked at him, this man I had married, this man who had hurt me so deeply. I did not know if we could make it work. I did not know if I could ever fully trust him again. But I was willing to try. Okay, I said. Let's start. We talked for hours. We talked about everything: the affair, the money, the loneliness. We talked about our marriage and where it had gone wrong. We talked about what we wanted for the future. It was not easy. There were tears and accusations and moments of silence. But we kept talking, and by the end of the night, I felt a fragile sense of hope. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking. I went to the front door and opened it. Clara was standing there, wearing a simple coat and carrying a small bag. "Hi," she said. "I know I should have called, but I wanted to see you." I stepped aside and let her in. "You look good," I said. "You look healthy." "I am," she said. "I have a new job. I'm working at a bakery. I make bread and pastries. It's not glamorous, but I like it." "That's wonderful," I said. She sat down at the kitchen table, and I made us coffee. Mark came downstairs and joined us. He was quiet, but he nodded at Clara. "Oh, we have a lot to work through," I said. "All of us. But I think we can do it. I think we can figure it out." Clara nodded. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything I did. I was so lost. I was so desperate. I hurt you, and I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry too. I should have been more patient. I should have listened." Mark cleared his throat. "I'm sorry too," he said. "For all of it." We sat there in the kitchen, the three of us, bound by blood and marriage and the mistakes we had made. It was not a grand reconciliation. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, with coffee and silence and the tentative beginnings of forgiveness. Later that day, I got a call from Ruth. She told me she had been looking into Mark's situation at work. She had made some calls, talked to some people. She told me that Alice was indeed the regional director's sister. The affair had been orchestrated to ensure Mark's loyalty. He had been a pawn. I hung up the phone and went to find Mark. I told him what Ruth had discovered. He sat down heavily, his face pale. "I didn't know," he said. "I had no idea." "I believe you," I said. He looked up at me, his eyes full of pain. "What do we do now?" "I don't know," I said. "But we'll figure it out. Together." He nodded, and I could see the relief in his face. That evening, Clara offered to cook dinner. She made a simple pasta with vegetables and a loaf of bread she had brought from the bakery. We sat around the table, the three of us, and we ate together. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. After dinner, I cleared the dishes and stood at the sink. I looked out the window at the darkening sky. Autumn was ending, and winter was coming. The trees were bare, and the air was cold. But I did not feel cold. I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I felt hope. I thought about my mother and her secret letters. I thought about the choices she had made, the mistakes and the regrets. I thought about how she had carried her burden alone. I was not going to carry mine alone. I had Clara. I had Mark. I had Ruth and Marisol. I had people who cared about me, people who were willing to help me rebuild. The road ahead was not going to be easy. There would be more conversations, more tears, more hard work. But I was ready for it. I was ready to face whatever came next. I dried my hands and walked back to the table. Clara was showing Mark a photo of the bakery on her phone. He was asking her questions, trying to make conversation. It was awkward and stilted, but it was a start. I sat down and joined them. I did not know what the future held. I did not know if Mark and I would make it. I did not know if Clara would stay or go. I did not know if my job would survive the upheaval. But I knew one thing for certain. I was not giving up. I had come too far to turn back now. I picked up my cup of tea and took a sip. It was warm and comforting, a small reminder that there was still goodness in the world. "Thank you," I said quietly. Clara looked at me. "For what?" "For being here," I said. "For trying." She smiled, a small, uncertain smile. "We're family," she said. "That's what we do." I looked at Mark. He met my eyes, and I saw the same uncertainty there. But I also saw something else. Determination. "We're going to be okay," I said. "I don't know how, but we will." We sat there in the living room, the three of us, surrounded by the quiet hum of the house. The windows were open, and the cool autumn air drifted in. Outside, the wind rustled through the bare trees. The leaves had fallen, and the ground was covered in gold and brown. It was the end of one season and the beginning of another. I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayals and the lies. The tears and the fights. The moments of despair and the fragile moments of hope. It had been a long journey, and it was far from over. But I was no longer afraid. I had found my strength, the strength my mother had passed down to me. It was not a loud or flashy strength. It was quiet and steady, like the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I listened to the sound of Clara's laughter and Mark's voice. I let the warmth of the moment wash over me. This was my life. Messy and imperfect and full of struggle. But it was mine. And I was not going to let anyone take it away from me. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. Winter came and went, and spring arrived with its slow, tentative warmth. I stood at the kitchen window one morning, watching the first buds appear on the trees, and I felt something shift inside me. It was not a sudden change, not a dramatic transformation. It was more like a slow thaw, the ice melting off a frozen river. Mark had kept his promise. He had transferred back to the local office, taking a demotion without complaint. He came home every night, and we ate dinner together. We talked about our days, about small things and big things. We started going to counseling, and it was hard. There were sessions where we barely spoke, where the silence was thick and uncomfortable. But we kept going. We kept trying. Clara had found her footing at the bakery. She had been promoted to assistant manager, and she talked about her work with a pride I had not seen in years. She came over for dinner once a week, and she always brought bread or pastries. We were not the same as we used to be. We were more careful with each other, more guarded. But the love was still there, underneath the caution. I had made peace with Dr. Reeves and Susan. She had stopped her campaign against me, and we had reached an uneasy truce. I did not trust her, and I never would. But I had learned to coexist with her, to focus on my work and let her be. Marisol remained my closest ally at the office, and we continued our lunches and our conversations. She had become a true friend, one of the few people I could count on. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, going through a box of old photos. I found a picture of my mother, taken when she was young. She was smiling, her eyes bright, her hair swept back. I held the photo in my hands and studied her face. I thought about the letters, the secret affair, the hidden life. I did not judge her anymore. I understood her. She was not perfect. She was just a woman, doing her best in a world that had not always been kind to her. Mark came and sat beside me. He looked at the photo and said, "She was beautiful." She was, I said. She was also complicated. She made mistakes. She kept secrets. Everyone does, he said quietly. I looked at him. You're right. Everyone does. We sat there in silence, the photo resting on my lap. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm orange glow across the room. I'm glad you stayed, I said. He took my hand. I'm glad you let me. I did not know what the future held. I did not know if our marriage would survive the scars we had inflicted on each other. I did not know if Clara would find lasting happiness. I did not know if I would ever feel fully safe at work. But I knew one thing. I was no longer running from the truth. I was facing it head-on, with the people who mattered most to me. I put the photo back in the box and closed the lid. I leaned against Mark and watched the sky darken outside the window. The house was quiet, but it was not empty. It was full of the small, ordinary moments that made up a life. The doorbell rang. I got up and opened the door. Clara was standing there, holding a loaf of bread and a bottle of wine. I thought I'd stop by, she said. I brought dinner. I smiled and stepped aside. Come in. She walked into the house, and Mark came out of the living room to greet her. They exchanged awkward pleasantries, and I watched them with a quiet sense of hope. We were not a perfect family. We were a broken one, held together by love and determination and the will to keep trying. But that was enough. It had to be enough. We sat down to dinner, the three of us, and we talked and laughed and ate. It was a simple evening, unremarkable in every way. But it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace.